In 2000, two men sat across a conference table from executives who could have bought their entire company for $50 million, and laughed them out of the room. The two men were Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph, co-founders of a small, struggling DVD-by-mail startup called Netflix. The executives were from Blockbuster, at the time the dominant video rental chain in America, with thousands of stores and billions of dollars in annual revenue. Netflix, in 2000, was nowhere close to the company it would eventually become. It was burning through cash, struggling to grow subscribers fast enough to justify its costs, and looking for a way out of an increasingly difficult financial position. Hastings and Randolph flew to Dallas to pitch Blockbuster's leadership on an acquisition, proposing that Blockbuster buy Netflix outright and let it operate as Blockbuster's online rental division. By most accounts of the meeting, Blockbuster's executives treated the pitch as barely worth serious consideration. Netflix, at the time, had a relatively small subscriber base, and Blockbuster's leadership reportedly viewed the entire DVD-by-mail model as a niche curiosity rather than a genuine threat to their thousands of physical stores and the enormously profitable late fee revenue those stores generated. Morgan Housel has written that the businesses most vulnerable to disruption are often the ones whose current success depends on the exact thing the disruption is designed to eliminate. Blockbuster's profitability was deeply tied to late fees, charges customers paid for returning rentals past the deadline, reportedly making up a significant portion of the company's overall revenue. Netflix's entire model, built around no due dates and no late fees, wasn't just a different way to rent movies. It was a direct attack on the specific revenue stream Blockbuster's business had grown to depend on. Benjamin Graham's investment philosophy emphasized evaluating what a business is actually worth based on its underlying fundamentals, not simply its current market position or reputation. Blockbuster's executives, by most retellings, evaluated Netflix based on its current, modest size rather than the trajectory of the model it represented, a mistake in judging genuine underlying value, made by a company that had every resource available to make a more careful assessment. Daniel Kahneman's research into how people evaluate risk and status quo bias helps explain part of why Blockbuster's leadership dismissed the offer so completely. Blockbuster was, at the time, an enormously successful, dominant company. That very success may have made genuine, objective evaluation of a small, and profitable competitor's long-term potential significantly harder. Success creates a kind of confidence that can make leadership less likely to seriously imagine their own current model becoming obsolete. Netflix survived, adjusted its strategy, and eventually pivoted from DVD-by-mail towards streaming video as internet infrastructure improved throughout the 2000s. Blockbuster, meanwhile, continued relying heavily on its physical store network and late fee revenue model for years, making some attempts to compete online but never fully committing to a strategy that would have required cannibalizing its own existing, profitable business model, a pattern with clear echoes in Kodak's own reluctance to fully embrace digital photography. Robert Kiyosaki's core lesson about understanding what actually generates an asset's income applies directly here. Blockbuster's real asset, in the executives' minds, was its network of physical stores. What they failed to fully recognize was that the actual value driving their business, convenient access to entertainment, could eventually be delivered in an entirely different form that made the stores themselves increasingly unnecessary. By 2010, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy, unable to compete with the streaming model Netflix had grown into over the preceding decade. Netflix, the company Blockbuster had turned away for $50 million, eventually grew into a business worth well over $100 billion at its peak, becoming one of the most successful entertainment companies in the world. Here's an honest complication worth including, since this exact meeting is sometimes retold with slightly different details depending on the source. The precise $50 million figure and some specifics of the exchange come primarily from accounts told years later by Netflix's own co-founders, and Blockbuster's side of the story has never been as thoroughly documented from their own internal perspective. The core outcome, Blockbuster passing on an opportunity to acquire Netflix early, and later collapsing as streaming displaced physical rental, is well established, even if the exact dialogue in the room has been somewhat dramatized in the retelling. George S. Clason's advice about recognizing genuine opportunity when it appears applies here as a cautionary counterexample. Blockbuster had the resources, the market position, and the opportunity to acquire the very technology that would eventually replace it, and chose instead to protect a business model that already felt comfortable and proven. This isn't a simple story about one company being smart and another being foolish. Blockbuster's decision made a certain kind of sense given what was actually known and visible in 2000. Netflix's own survival and eventual pivot to streaming was far from guaranteed at the time either. What makes this story worth remembering is the specific pattern it illustrates. Sometimes the businesses best positioned to see a disruption coming are also the ones with the least incentive to take it seriously, because acknowledging it clearly would mean threatening the very model that's currently working. So here's a question worth sitting with. Is there something in your own field, career, or habits right now that you might be dismissing simply because taking it seriously would mean admitting your current approach needs to change? Before you leave, I want to hear from you. Have you ever dismissed an opportunity or a warning sign because your current situation felt too comfortable or successful to take it seriously? Read a few comments before you go. Some of the most honest reflections on this channel come from people who've recognized exactly this pattern in their own decisions, sometimes too late. Next week, I'll pick one comment and send its author one of the books that inspired this channel. And if these stories help you think differently about money, you'll find a way to support future research in the description. Every contribution helps buy books, access research, and keep this content free for everyone. Remember this. Blockbuster didn't fail because nobody warned them about Netflix. It failed because the people who could see it clearest had the least reason to take it seriously.